My name's Leszek, and I will be talking with Frank van der Hulst about scaling a startup, climate tech trends, and challenges in the water industry. Frank, can you take us back to the beginning? What inspired you to start HULO, and how did your career path lead to your focus on water conservation and AI?
Yeah, really nice. Thank you, at least first, for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's we've been. So my road has been. I first started in aeronautical engineering, so I've come from like completely different than underground pipes. So where I'm now acting in, but so really an engineering background, and then I focused a little bit more on robotics at some point. And then I started my career in robotics and self-driving cars. So really completely different topic. And then I moved actually to a company, Acquaint. They built robotics for water pipelines, and that's where really my journey started. So in the water industry, it was just really fascinating. What really fascinated me at the beginning was directly the knowledge of people about water. It's so common that you turn open a tap, at least in the Netherlands, it's so common that you turn open a tap and water flows out of it. But actually to make that possible is really interesting, and how that is all about, so how all the systems work. And then through research that we participated in, we found actually that there are still super high leakage rates around the world, where those robotics were really focused on the Western utilities with low leakage rates. But worldwide there's around 30% is leaking away, so in the system. So so it's an amazing amount, and that actually really made a really good start of where HULO really started. And then next to that, we also saw how the current water industry works. That also is something that we really would like to challenge that status quo. So with that energy, I think we founded HULO as a company who makes software for water utilities to really detect those leakages on time and quickly to mitigate all the problems and the water loss considering to it.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. I mean, now that we've got a sense of your journey, let's dive into the technology itself, because it's really fascinating. Can you explain how the technology works, especially how it detects leaks in real time without relying on extensive historical data? It's really interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I shouldn't dive in too deep, of course. But no, it's in general our technology that's based on the use of that. There are now existing a lot of IoT sensors, right? So I think over the past decade, I think IoT sensors became really popular. A lot of utilities worldwide, they installed a lot of sensors, and now we actually get the question a lot from a lot of utilities that we get so much sensor data, but we cannot make sense of it anymore. So where, of course, AI and machine learning in general really plays a big part, and that's also where our technology really relies on it. There is a large amount of sensors in the network, or larger amount of sensors in the network, let's say it like that, so that you really can focus on making sense of all that data that has an hydraulic collaboration to each other, or hydraulic correlation to each other. So all the water
recognize the signal, basically. That's what you're trying to do. Yeah.
All the water is in the pipe, it's connected. So one pressure sensor at the left side of the network and the one on the right side, they still are influenced by each other. So that water is still, if something happens. That's a little bit how our technology works. So what we built is machine learning models which are on top of sensor data only. So the grouping of anomalies, and then we will move towards where is the leak happening, basically. That's the next step. But really that part where we rely on our machine learning models that builds like basically knowledge on top of the models on top of the sensor data. And for that we use more sensors, so in the spatial sense than in a temporal sense, where traditional methods are much more focused around, okay, you have one flow sensor, for example, that goes into the network. with only the daily pattern. So people wake up in the morning and then they go to work. So there's a little bit of dip, and then in the evening they go to shower and wash and cook again. So that's really the standard pattern of water consumption. You can also see it in energy consumption as well. It's the same pattern. But that's really a fascinating thing. But what normally the traditional method is always predicting that daily pattern. That's basically, so a lot of forecasting models are based on predicting the model, what you expect to be there today again. And that's always will fail if that's, for example, yesterday it was really sunny in the Netherlands, but today it's already starting to becoming a little bit more cloudy. So people will use less water, for example, in the garden, let's say it like that. So you already see those changes, or if other events will happening. So if, we also saw with some utilities, if a holiday season starts, everybody moves away. Also, the complete pattern fails. Then if you predict that exactly that day, then you need to feed it a lot of external knowledge, and we much more rely on the internal knowledge of the network itself. So with all the sensors they have available to predict other sensors, basically. So that's what it's come down to. So we, if you want to really flatten it, we make it. We build multivariate time series models based on the existing sensor data.
Okay, and how efficient can you get compared to traditional water management methods?
So,
or basically, or leakage detection methods.
Yeah, I think I think it's in there are three metrics basically what are really important for utilities and water loss. That's basically time. So how long, when, how fast can you detect a leak? Second is which size leak can you detect? And then third is the location of the leak. So how well can you localize it? I think in time we are exceeding everything what is currently in the market. So we detect in seconds. So basically when data comes in, we directly detect if there is something going on in the system. So you can give utilities really fast response times, where the current status quo is called night flow monitoring. So that basically is checking the night flow of today, so at 2-3 o'clock, because that's where you expect the least amount of consumption, so stable consumption of water. Compare that consumption to the day before, and if that is so, is that is a little bit increased, then you could think of that there would be a leak in the system, and that is the status quo. What we one of the things that we battle against, basically, and then so the fastest that they can detect is in 1 day. And if you then want to have a little bit more security around your, yes, it's really a leak, instead of that just there is more water consumption in the evening, then you need at least, for example, 2 days or 3 days. So leaks are generally quite long in the system already. So that's where we challenge on time. Then on the other one is on the size of the leaks. We, in that sense, we are limited by the sensor. So how good are the sensors? Which kind of noise do sensors have, or the density of the sensors in the network? And I think in general we are there on the same level as that night flow monitoring. So night flow monitoring, you can really see small increases, and we can do the same, but I think if you look over a week, for example, you see steadily that there's definitely an increase. I think that gives a little bit more certainty. So we are there on the same level as it, but not better. So I'm not gonna here convince you that we have the holy grail on leak detection in the water industry. That's then I won't be honest. And then the other one is on localization, and I think on localization we really we can detect leaks on, like, say, 250 meter radius area. So that's not pinpointing it, hey, it's here in the street, but it's really in this area of the network that you have to look. And for your reference, we are monitoring in general around 300 kilometers of pipe per area. So that's quite a large areas that we are looking at. So if you can reduce that to 200 meter, maybe 500 meters. So that in that range, that search area,
Mm-hmm.
you will reduce a lot of time for water utilities to find leaks in the field actually. So that's really good, but we are not. There are methods in the industry that can really pinpoint where a leak is, but they are also really cost intensive and resource intensive. So it will take you a month to find those leaks, but then you have it at least pinpointed. So we always picture that to the utility as well. So we are a monitoring system, and as soon as we detect a leak, you still need somebody physical in the field searching and pinpointing the leak in the traditional method. So what they can find it in one day instead of that they have to search for a month, for example. So that's the difference that we challenge in that sense. So yeah, I think that's a little bit how our system compares to the current status quo.
Mm-hmm. Just a follow-up question. I can only imagine that the pinpointing part is totally different when you're looking for leakage in an urban sort of location or kind of terrain compared to a countryside. It's I guess it's totally different kind of venture, right?
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you have like no insights at all. So normally in the city areas they have, for example, 5 sensors per 100 kilometers, let's say it like that, and in the rural areas it's maybe 2 or 3 or something. So also the search area is much reduced. But then with a lot of like expert knowledge, you can quite reduce. That's also partly what we do as well, like to reduce the search area based on the leakage patterns that you see, for example. But that's really more a traditional method. It's the leakage pattern that you see that's really is, for example, of a pipe with this diameter and with this type of material. So then you can zoom in a little bit if you know where those materials are in the ground, that you can see, okay, this leakage pattern is basically connected to PVC pipes, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Then you know that you only have to search for PVC pipes. But it's something that we really, at the moment, still do as almost on a ad hoc basis instead of really having it in our platform at the moment.
All right. Can you share some success stories how HULO helped reduce water in specific regions? I don't know. And maybe before that, you could explain the specific locations that you operate in.
Yeah, for sure. So we are currently operating in the Netherlands, so our home base. In the Netherlands, the question is a little bit different than in other countries. Next to that, we are making waves in Brazil. Next to that, we are also having some progress in Oman and in Africa, so in the African continent. So that's also nice, and some other European utilities that we collaborate a little bit on. And yeah, in the Netherlands, so why is the Netherlands different than other countries? Is because the Netherlands has a really low leakage rate. So they are in all the charts, basically all the rankings, they are at number 1 if it comes down to leakage and the low amount of leakage that they have.
What's the reason behind it? Is the infrastructure that is new, high quality, or are there any other reasons for that?
Nah, so there are multiple reasons. One, I think the most important and a takeaway for water utilities abroad is long-term strategy planning. So I think 30 years ago, they started with a lot of data gathering already, a lot of really good insights, and also in like really, okay, which pipe should we replace, and making really that on just not on ad hoc basis, but really making studies of that. So they had really good strategic planning. Next to that, yeah, we have, of course, the soil that we have in the Netherlands. There are almost no rocks in our soil, for example.
Mm-hmm.
It's flat, so there's a lot of, so not too much ground movement. So we are, in that sense, we are also lucky. But if I compare it to other utilities abroad, it's definitely, I think the success factor of everything is that they did over the last 30, maybe 40 years, they did really good strategic planning within the utilities and work together. So they made really good steps there.
Yeah. Where are you planning to expand next?
So we are planning to extend next in Brazil. That's really where we want to scale. For us, it's a really interesting market because they are quite far with their digital maturity. So they have a lot of systems already operating. They still experience high leakage rates. So that's somewhere we can really help. So directly onboard those clients instead of that we have to help them first by actually placing sensors.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I'd like to talk about challenges. Every innovation faces challenges. So what were some of the biggest challenges you guys faced when first developing HULO, whether technical, financial, or related to market adoption? Sorry.
Yeah. So we have a couple of challenges, and I think one is really on the technical side. It's like also the discussion of cloud and fees on premise and all those kind of discussions, because water utilities are quite conservative. And water is also seen about almost in every country as the level 1 security, I think it's called, or I'm not sure in English, but at least that it's of state important that you protect the water sources and protect also water delivery to people at homes, because that they always have sufficient drinking water. And that's due to that they, for example, terrorists can attack the drinking water sources and have a large impact on everything. So security, they have a lot of high standards. That was one of the challenges that we had to overcome. So to be trustworthy, to let them know what we talk about. We develop a cloud solution, so that's also gave some extra challenges to it, because we get often a request for on-premise solutions. But that's for us, solution will also be much more expensive. So that's not what we are really looking for. And so that was one of the challenges that we had to first really decide, and we tested everything. So maybe we should go on premise, and maybe we should go in the cloud already, or maybe we should support both. And at the end, we made a decision to support both, also due to mentors who had more experience than me in the technical sense. They basically said, you should try to stay away from on-premise solutions, especially in the complexity that we work with multiple systems from our clients. So that's something that we had really some issues with. And I think another challenge that we in general have is also due to the water utilities are conservative. So the general adoption of new technology, they have quite a lot of long roadmaps, and we are of course a really young company. So that's also what you see in the water utility industry, that most of the companies are actually consultancy companies. So they get like small assignments and they try to develop a software tool to the side. Whereas we said, no, we don't want to do consultancy at all. We want to build a product. But you know that the sales trajectories with water utilities are more than a year, basically. So it's a long sales lines. So that's also why we got external investors on board to help us in that sense with extending that runway, and also give focus to the product that we can deliver something that is really valuable for water utilities. But we'll have this payback in a couple of years, basically, when you went through all the process with water utilities, and you can go for to really work together with them and show the value of that sense as well. So that was really a challenge. To find the financing, we were in a really lucky position. I think that we didn't have too much challenge for that. So it was really went quite well for us on that side. So I'm looking forward to the next funding round. So that's see how that goes.
Keeping my fingers crossed. I can only imagine. But one more follow-up question to that, which is, you guys started in, as I understand, Netherlands, which is, as you said, one of the top countries in terms of low leakage ratio, percentage score, whatever you call it. And I can only imagine that it's really harder to sell in Netherlands, so like this kind of service, than it is, for instance, to sell it in Brazil, which is facing all those challenges you mentioned. So my understanding is that you actually started in a market that is really, really hard. I mean, it's local. You can sell locally, but it's also very, very hard because the value added is not as big compared to Brazil, for example. Is that kind of true, or I'm misunderstanding something?
No, I think it's at least definitely in some extent definitely true, because in the Netherlands our value proposition is different indeed. So in the Netherlands we think what we add value to is to the utilities in time. So how fast they are, the response time to a leak, and that can have great impact as well on damages to other infrastructure. So around the leak, for example. But that's so it's not about the water loss, but it's much more about the damage that the leak is causing.
Mhm.
And yeah, we showed really good. So in every utility that we worked in the Netherlands with, we showed really good improvement in response time. So how fast they were at a leak, because in the Netherlands, a leak is detected by the people who live there. So they call when they have no pressure anymore. That's basically how it goes in the Netherlands. They don't have too much monitoring systems on leakage, so that's also an interesting point. And indeed, in Brazil, it's much the value will be much higher if you can prove your technology there. So that's definitely also what we see. So it's really a good market to grow, whereas the Netherlands is a good market to innovate and to collaborate with the utilities, because they're quite open at the innovation levels. And especially also to other Dutch or European companies. So that's really good and really a nice ecosystem. Let's say it like that. So that's something that we have really the benefit in the Netherlands of, and that they gave us a shot like a couple of years ago, so that that we can try and prove our technology. That was already. But Brazil is a much more scaling market, and where we can add much more value. Only then there are other things that are challenging, and that's, for example, the tax system around external companies. So that is a challenge. That you live far away, of course, is a challenge. So there's a lot of challenges, and as well next to the Netherlands, for example, the UK is also losing around 30% of their water. So it's really high. And there you see a lot of challenges around how the market works. So they have like 5-year plans, and they invest at the beginning of those 5 years, and you have to wait again 5 years, which is really not that well for a startup, of course, because you need to prove before and then you need to access it. Next to that, it's also quite competitive market due to, I think, it is all commercialized and people know each other. And the other one is, for example, we also did Italy. We looked in Italy for because they also have a lot of high leakage rates, and they got a lot of funding from the EU to solve it. But all the funding went to engineering companies, which then have to search for technology partners to integrate. So it's also a weird system. So that's also, again, really an atmosphere of where you need to know people and that you need to know the network. And to really get into those contracts, basically. So it's again a long road.
For sure.
It's, I think, the biggest challenge in water industry.
Absolutely. I mean, expanding globally is a great opportunity, but it's also a challenge and challenging. So, but I want to like shift gears a bit and talk about some other challenges, which basically scaling company itself presents its own set of management dilemmas. I'd like to talk about those. So I can like scaling a startup, I guess, often means finding the right balance between innovation and managing operations. And I want to ask you, how do you guys balance those two things with HULO? And specifically, at what point does management become too much in your overview? In your view?
Yeah, that's also a challenge that we definitely face, I think, in HULO. So we started to scale the company, the team, a little bit this year. So it's also something that is really recent for us. In general, we had, I think, to get to really to team collaborating, we have an international team as well, which is really I don't think it's a challenge. It's also an added value to have multiple cultures and multiple diversity within the team. I think that's really good for the team balance. But to get everybody collaborating, and then people were used to their own type of work, and then new people come in, and it's all also sometimes a little bit challenging for everyone in the team. But yeah, on one end, when does management become too much? I think that's a very good question. I think it's if you are more in meetings than that you're doing actually work in an early stage startup. That's really some point where you think, okay, I'm now too much in meetings, but it's also that's I think where management comes too much. Yeah, that's
got it. Speaking of international team, diverse team, what qualities do you prioritize when hiring? And basically that's the question. What kind of traits are you looking for?
Yeah, that's we have a quite let's say strict interview process where we do first really focus on the technical. If we look at developers, we do a technical test. It should be a fairly simple test, but sometimes they are quite a lot of people were struggling with it. So there was one part that we do in the process, and then we also, after that is successful, we invite them to do a personality test. So we are looking at what is somebody's personality and how will they fit in the team. So what are good traits and what are good traits for the current team that we have and the current people that we have in the team. So for example, if you have a lot of in the beginning we were all like that's more go-getters, but also much more on innovation. So we were the whole founding team was not really good in finishing and make tasks, and also doing the repetitive things as well. Like, so if you do all the time the same things, that's something that we miss. So that's something that you are really looking for into people that you hire, so that you're complementary to each other. So we try to test that in that sense, that we use a tool for that, a touch tool to map personalities. And in general, what we are looking for in our current stage is really people that fit to our values as a company, and we set them as honesty, adventure, achievement, and respect to each other. So that's the values that we are going by, and it comes really from me and from Robert as founding members, and we are searching people as well who fit that. And we recently had our team day, and actually we got some compliments from people from outside of the group how well everybody was already fitting to each other, like in a such short time, that it was everybody was really looking really comfortable. So that was really where you can see that people have some kind of same personality. So it's not like that they are how do you say it, if they collide to each other. That was not really the case. So that's something that I really was really happy and appreciated to see, that I think we have at the moment built a great team of great personalities and people, indeed with diverse backgrounds. So it's also
cool. Congrats. My final question is related to climate tech. So my understanding is HULO plays an important role in tackling water management issues. But I want to get your thoughts on how do you see climate tech evolving in the coming years? What's coming next, and also how HULO will adapt itself to those trends and happenings in the market?
Yeah, that's a really nice question. Can go really long about that as well. But in general, what I think is important and what people and companies should really think about is about value instead of like about how much money they make. So that's also something that you see in climate tech, is that they are always counted on how well they perform. So we are, how much water can you save, for example. That's something that people will judge us on as well, next to that if we make money, yes or no. But and for example, if you do decarbonization, for example, then how well can you decarbonize the air. But in general, so that's where I think that is a really important factor to always judge a company about how they do add value, if they even turn break even or not. But I think there should also be a value in other things than only money. So that's basically it. I think there's some really good programs for that already happening worldwide. So you see larger companies, they want to have like zero carbon footprint or zero water use. So you see, for example, the big cloud providers, they want to compensate for their water use in the data centers, to compensate for it by helping the local communities around that. So by providing funds there to help those communities with technology what normally would be out of scope because of price, whether they can actually use it. So that's something that is really interesting. And I think that's also an important part, in the sense of that people will that ecosystem is much more in a, how do you say it, in a balance, that you that not everything turns about profits. I know that the world is not working like that, unfortunately, but that's something that I think is really important, because at the end, also, for example, in water systems, so a lot of people, they make judgments of like pipes. Why do actually pipe leak before, for example? Why don't we just over-engineer pipes, for example? So we throw in a lot of different materials over the years, and they fail in all different ways. And now we are throwing in new types of materials. We don't know how they fail, because they will fail in 50 years. But you can also, for example, throw in a cast iron pipe, which is thick enough that you know that it will last for 200 years, for example, and will never fail. It's also a possibility, but you make some decisions there. And I see that often with tech especially, and also I think HULO in that sense is also part of it. We add value, so we can show that we lower the water loss of and the water use of utilities, so we add value in that sense. What it would be even better if we actually were not needed, so if there were not that many leaks, or for example. So I think that's in a lot of different senses as well, because I talked in the beginning about decarbonizing a little bit. That's I think a hot topic in climate tech as well. But yeah, the best thing would be if that was not needed either. So if there was just more such production. So always in that system. So that's a little bit compensating on one side, and one is making the right choices in the beginning. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for sharing the HULO story, the technology behind it. And well, basically, it was a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you as well. It was really nice to be here.
Better Tech Leadership, powered by Brainhub. Follow Leszek on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Better Tech Leadership newsletter.